Hello listeners, and welcome to the Montel Weekly Podcast, bringing you energy matters in an informal setting. I'm Richard Sverrisson, and today I'm joined by Philip Gladek, who's the founder and CEO of Spectral Energy, a company at the cutting edge of new energy technology. Welcome, Philip.
Thanks for the welcome, and thanks for hosting, Richard.
I'd like to ask if you could tell us a little bit about Spectral Energy and some of the projects you're involved in, because you're based in Amsterdam, just in a very kind of vibrant, sort of a buzzy area north of the centre. Mm-hmm. And if you could sort of tell us a little bit about the projects you're involved in.
Sure. So, to introduce Spectral, we're a company focused on system integration, and our mission is really to help accelerate the transition towards 100% renewable supply. And we do that by developing technologies to help connect different devices together to prepare for the future digital energy sector, developing energy control systems which optimize buildings to save energy on heating, ventilation, and cooling. We also develop solutions for community grids and larger area-level smart grids, where we connect and optimize sources of renewable production, storage, and flexible sources of demand, such as EV charging points, heat pumps, as well as large-scale assets such as wind farms and grid-scale batteries. So that's a bit the context of the application areas that we focus on.
And what's the underlying technology here? I mean, you mentioned blockchain. Is that one of them, but not exclusively blockchain, as far as I understand?
So we do use blockchain as a powerful tool to support certain functionalities within the work we do. And that's mainly in the side of the work around power trading and energy markets. So we see blockchain as a very valuable IT tool that can facilitate settlement and transactions between not only peers but also between market stakeholders, and so that has been a theme in a lot of our projects. But more broadly, we focus on energy control systems. So really the digital backbone behind the future energy sector.
If you could go into some detail about how you use the blockchain, it's not just, if I understand you correctly, it's not just peer-to-peer, but it's also, microgrid to microgrid or device. I mean,
sure.
Can you go right down to the granularity and then up to the bigger sort of system perspective?
Definitely. So maybe to give you a couple of examples showing sort of the different flavors of how we can implement the blockchain as a technology. On one hand, we have a peer-to-peer trading solution, which we're piloting or have already started piloting in 2017 with a number of communities. And there we actually use blockchain as a means to, on one hand, tokenize renewable energy into a physical asset that can be traded on the blockchain. The example being the Juliet, which was a project we did with the largest grid operator in the Netherlands in a community, looking at how can you manage this decentralized exchange of value, and also looking at the social aspects. And there we developed not only a software platform that allowed users to configure settings, but also to manage their trading activities, but also a hardware solution that is able to extract real-time data out of smart metering systems and to transact that data onto a blockchain so that everyone connected into the system has a record of all the transactions and the data that's been committed. And so that is, for example, one use case which we're working on and further developing in the context of also new upcoming projects. Another interesting use case where we're applying blockchain is more on the side of flexibility trading. So we're working on behalf of clients of ours, developing solutions that can coordinate multiple flexibility sources that are bid by third parties or aggregators. So sort of a virtual power plant coordination platform where third parties can connect and bid their sources of flex, which then together as a pool are used to, for example, provide frequency containment reserves to the TSO here in the Netherlands, Tenet. And so one of the interesting things which blockchain can support is, again, the settlement and trading between these parties, because to give an example, one of the projects we're working on is a private microgrid with a community of 46 households. There they have limited interconnection capacity on the connection point with the public grid, meaning that if they want to use their 31 distributed battery systems to be part of this kind of pool to deliver FCR to Tenet, well,
FCR being frequency control response,
frequency containment reserves.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Or the primary reserve market here. Yeah. If they want to participate, and obviously the volume they have is too small to participate on their own, so they need to be in such a pool. But there are moments where in the winter, everyone's cooking, cars are charging, heat pumps are running to heat the houses, and well, there simply isn't enough physical capacity on that connection point with the grid. Well, in those moments, platform can enable, and of course via fully automated trading agents, Schoonschip to broker a deal with another aggregator to be able to pick up the slack for them. So if they can't at that moment discharge or rather charge their batteries to deliver FCR for Tenet, this other solution provider can pick up the slack for them, and that financial transaction can be fully automated via the platform. And using blockchain, all of these different parties who might not have always complete trust for one another are able to share the data and also the immutable record of the transactions which took place to deliver essentially together as one unit these services.
So what are the numbers involved here? I mean, for example, a small, you're going from 36 or households to
46,
to big wind farms, and your systems can deal with both of those. I mean, could you explain a little bit about the scalability of your technology or your solutions here?
So I mean, we're very much focused on applications across, as you mentioned, from the household level up until grid scale systems. So our platform is scalable across all different technologies, and we support the communication protocols which are used by industry for SCADA systems for wind farms down to smaller scale residential batteries. So in principle, our platform is technology agnostic. And indeed, I mean, to give a concrete case, building upon the example I already gave, the Schoonschip community there, they have 31 distributed battery systems, also smart grid-ready heat pumps and heat storage. We're now starting up a project to actually connect their pool of batteries together with a number of batteries which will be stationed at a wind farm, which we're also controlling. And these batteries belong to a company which is renting them for festivals and events. So they have mobile containerized batteries of around 300 kilowatts per unit, and they have 13 of these containers currently. So essentially, we enable Schoonschip to gain market access by bundling them with these larger systems, so that together they can still be able to provide these services to Tenet and participate on this market.
So it's not just really a small scale of, because often people mention microgrids and blockchain thinking it's just small scale, it's neighbours trading a little bit of excess solar, but from what you're saying, it's much more enormous, it's much bigger than that.
It has been small scale to date in that the pilot projects have been focused on getting the technology to a certain level of maturity. But of course, as we know, in certain applications around peer-to-peer trading, there are some regulatory challenges which aren't, let's say, completely blocking these applications, but there are definitely workarounds you have to implement to make these kind of solutions actually work in the current structure of industry and regulatory frameworks. However, we are in the stage of actually scaling up. So the technology is reaching a more mature level. Of course, the buzz has a bit died down since 2017-18 when everyone was talking about it.
About blockchain,
about blockchain itself. And now I think it's being indeed applied as more of simply a tool which can support different applications. And it's not the right tool for every application, because that was sort of the mindset in the beginning that a lot of people had. But definitely when it comes to managing distributed value exchange between different parties who might have some degree of distrust. Those are areas where it can definitely add value. And we're also working on an innovation program, which is starting November 1st, together with the city of Amsterdam, as well as there's a parallel demonstrator running in Spain, in the city of Bilbao, and 6 other European municipalities are involved, aiming to replicate the efforts of what we're doing. And in Amsterdam, Spectral is leading the technical development of the what we're doing here is essentially setting up a local energy market platform. We're connecting a number of our projects and pioneering energy communities within the same district in Amsterdam called Bouwkslotterham. And we're actually bundling together the volume of their energy demand and the flexibility they have to provide them with this market access. And blockchain is indeed used as a fundamental tool within this platform to facilitate transactions between these communities, between these sources of flexibility. And that will, in the start of the program, we'll have around 500 households involved. Not only households, but also businesses like a large hotel and other commercial businesses. But we do aim to scale up to the entire district level within the 5 years of the program. So at least 10,000 consumers connected to the system. And that's sort of our first step towards scaling up the technology to a larger implementation.
Yep, very interesting. I mean, I will turn back to the to the regulatory challenges here, but if we can discuss a little bit, you mentioned the environmental credentials, or this was a way of facilitating the shift to a greener world, less fossil fuels, more renewables. But what are the economics here? I mean, what were the costs? Are people? Is this a costly transition, or are you actually bringing those down?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think. And again, to bring perhaps the focal point of the conversation away from purely blockchain as a technology towards some of the broader applications we focus on in development of energy control systems. There, our company has been very much commercially driven, so not relying on subsidies, but really looking at, together with our clients, together with the market, developing solutions that have a positive business case. So for one, the community grid at Schoonschip, which is quite a revolutionary project in that via this legal exemption, they have their own private microgrid. They are legally, actually, via this exemption, their own grid operator, their own energy supplier, and their own energy producer. And if we look at the comparison between the status quo, so if everyone had their own public grid connection with just PV on the roof, we took that case over 20 years and compared it to the case of the smart grid, the private net, and every household having batteries and these smart energy systems. And the payback period is actually around 7 years. So without any subsidies, the community has a highly interesting business case through investing, of course, into their own solutions. And you do need capital to invest upfront, and they did so with their mortgages, with loans, and managed to pull the project off. But in other cases where we, for example, focus on optimizing smart buildings, so we actually analyze data from large real estate portfolios. We identify buildings that are really underperforming in terms of energy efficiency and or comfort levels. And we go in and actually take control of the building management system to optimize the heating, ventilation, and cooling systems. Well, I can share with you some results from initial pilots that are still ongoing now. But one case was where a building in Eindhoven of 12,000 square meters, large office building, which we're currently optimizing. So our business model works on a euro per square meter basis per year. So it's roughly, let's say, in the range of €1 per square meter per year. Hence, the costs for licensing our platform are in the range of €12,000 for that building. The results we've managed to achieve so far on the side of energy efficiency are an average of €1,000 per week in savings, with an estimate of at least €50,000 in savings for 1 year. If we count the roughly €10,000 it also costs to for the capex for integrating our platform and for setting it up for that building, well, that's about 20,000 euros in total costs for the first year versus about 50,000 euros in savings. So there's an extremely positive business case. And that's also why this particular client has now asked us to roll out the platform across 66 additional buildings in their portfolio. So there's definitely positive business cases to be had in the smart energy sphere. And not only the business case, but in that particular building as well, there was an average of 7 complaints a month or so before we actually started our implementation. And between June and August, we had 0 complaints for climate. So saving a huge amount of energy while actually also improving the climate within the building.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. If we can then return to some of these regulatory challenges, for me is one of them, if you're setting up an energy system that has a lot of these small microgrids, then fewer and fewer people are potentially using the high voltage transmission grid, which then becomes more costly. So there's fewer and fewer people sharing, the costs of the upkeep and the maintenance and the construction of the grid. Isn't that problematic?
Yeah, definitely, and it's not only on the high voltage, but of course, indeed, the mid voltage networks. And in general, you point out an interesting challenge which the energy sector is heading into, is that through investment into these microgrids, or essentially, they're still grid connected. They still have that point of coupling with the public grid. But in the case of Schoonschip, to give an example, normally the grid operator would be getting 46 times the household connection, which is on a periodic basis quite a lot of money, a factor 10 more expensive than what they pay just having their one bigger grid connection. And at the same time, new digital solutions allow for automation of, for example, our smart building platform gives recommendations to users to be able to reduce their contracted capacity, and that's something that also is cutting out the profit margins of these grid operators, and hence, here in the Netherlands, because the costs are socialized across the entire public, that means as the profit margins of the grid operators go down, at the same time they have to invest into more infrastructure because electrification of mobility and heating is creating a lot of strain. Renewables are creating a lot of pressure points in the grid infrastructure. So you're getting a situation where more and more people are sort of partially opting out, or in other ways keeping their costs for grid connection as low as possible, while at the same time the costs are getting higher for the grid operators, meaning more costs will have to be spread across essentially a smaller group of people. So this is potentially a sort of death spiral if the current market models stay the way they do. On the other hand, I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe policy and market mechanisms will evolve to address this issue, but this is a trend we do see at the moment.
And in terms of other trends, what does what you're saying here, your platform, your kind of systems, the world we're talking about here, where does the traditional utility sit, and where does that leave the exchanges or the middlemen, who often blockchain's been referred to as sort of bypassing these middlemen? Is this the case here as well?
Definitely, in terms of certain existing market players, such as, obviously banks have a huge role still in that transactions are, financial transactions are all running through banks. There's other service providers in terms of, also in the Netherlands, you have parties like the EDSN, which are responsible for energy data. A lot of these stakeholders start to become less relevant if you implement solutions such as blockchain. So for sure, there's going to be a big shift in existing market roles as this digital technology really takes way. My personal opinion is that the role of the energy retailer, the sort of administration company, as it's traditionally been, the commodity trading aspect is really on the way out. So that's also why all the big energy suppliers are looking for new products and solutions, moving closer to the customer or getting behind the meter. On the other hand, I do think exchanges, trading platforms are still an important element. And while we see emergence of these local energy market platforms and more peer-to-peer exchange, there will always be an either excess or deficit that needs to be purchased or acquired somewhere. And whether this happens on an exchange or via new mechanisms such as some kind of forms of PPAs, that is something that the future will tell. But so that's a bit of what I see happening. And when it comes to grid operator role, well, for sure, there will always need to be the infrastructure in place and a company that's maintaining it. In the context of these private grids which we're developing, which also EU policy is in large support of, there we see again more of an approach where the traditional grid operators, the regulated bodies, of course, aren't involved there. It's commercial entities, companies that take on the same responsibilities. For example, Spectral also offers software solutions to help monitor and manage and also provide billing services for these mini grids. So how that will all evolve is very difficult to predict. But there is definitely a scenario where more and more fragmentation happens in the sense that there's more and more mini grids sort of being serviced by commercial entities, which creates a certain level of competition to be the most efficient in providing those management services. And that competition doesn't exist when you're talking about the regulated grid operators. So again, this could exacerbate the problem of, you have the grid operators are usually owned by municipalities. They have more of a public service mentality, which doesn't often result in efficient processes or keeping overhead costs low. So if you suddenly have these smaller mini grids or areas that are serviced by more efficient commercial entities that can sort of do it at a better price, that again creates more and more incentive for people to sort of opt out of the public grid situation and invest into their own microgrids. So I do see that these factors will impact how the market is formed in the future.
Absolutely. Do you think, you must have had some interactions with regulators, etc. How do they, and TSOs, you mentioned TenneT earlier, and some of the distribution system operators, are the regulators interested, or how do they view these kind of projects? Are they encouraging or a little bit more kind of conservative?
No, definitely interested. I mean, in fact, this special legal exemption I mentioned that we're making use of not only at Schoonscape but at several other projects, the experimenteerregeling it's called in Dutch, so the experimental exemption loosely translated. That was created by the Ministry of Economic Affairs, essentially as a precursor to regulatory change, to really see, they give out a limited number of permits per year with the goal of actually examining through practical applications, pilot projects, how should the regulatory frameworks be adapted to just make this part of the law, the electricity law. And so actually, given that we're amongst the first companies, and I think the only company in the Netherlands really pushing the boundaries on these innovative, smart microgrids, the regulators are very eagerly looking at how we're setting things up. I've had numerous conversations with the tax authorities. I mean, also the tariff structures and how we communicate those to consumers have to be approved by the consumer regulator, the ACM here, and the RVO is the governmental organization within the Netherlands responsible for actually giving out these permits on behalf of the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And we work very closely with the representatives from the RVO, also giving our feedback on which aspects of this permit are sort of blocking innovation, which kind of laws should be in place to make sure that it's fair, but also encouraging investments into renewables and accelerating the transition.
Philip, we could go on for hours here, but it's fascinating to hear all this, and thank you very much for giving us a glimpse of the future, if you like, a sort of brave new world. So thank you very much for joining us. I think we could say blockchain is certainly not dead yet.
No, certainly not. And a lot of other innovative technology is underway. So thanks, Richard, for hosting and for inviting me to join the podcast. And I hope all the listeners found it interesting.
I'm sure they did. That's all for now. Please follow all the latest energy news on montelnews.com and on LinkedIn and Twitter. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Goodbye.